listen, practice, speak. Practice makes you perfect.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Deep Dive. Today we're taking a look at those HR phrases we hear all the time at work, almost like they're a secret code.
It's true. Those phrases are really important to how companies work, but they're more than just jargon.
Yeah, if you can understand them, they can make a real difference.
Huge difference. Whether you're job hunting, managing a team, or just figuring out your own career.
And that's exactly why we're doing this deep dive.
Right on.
We've got a ton of sources here that break down these HR terms.
Yeah.
I have to say, some of them really caught my eye.
Like what?
Like talent acquisition. It just sounds so much more, I don't know, strategic than plain old hiring.
It is. The whole shift to talent acquisition shows how the job market is changing.
How so?
Companies are realizing that finding the right people isn't just about filling a job, it's about attracting and keeping the best talent.
Ah, so it's not just about sending out your resume and crossing your fingers anymore.
Not at all.
So where do we even begin with all these terms?
Okay, well, our sources lay out all these different HR functions.
Right.
Starting with recruitment and hiring.
Right. Let's talk about that talent acquisition thing. What does that actually mean?
It's like a whole approach to finding the best person for a job.
Okay.
Starts with making a job description that doesn't just list duties, but shows off the company culture and what makes that job special.
So kind of like a company's dating profile.
I like that, yeah. Just like you'd want to look good on a dating app, companies want to do the same with their job descriptions.
Attract the right candidates.
Exactly. They don't just want qualified people, they want people who fit in culturally, too.
Got it. Then comes the actual dating part, the candidate screening, I guess.
Right. That's when employers go through applications and look for candidates who have the skills and experience they need.
Oh, so like reviewing resumes, doing phone interviews, maybe even those online tests.
Yeah, exactly.
That seems like it could get tricky, though, with AI and algorithms being used more and more in hiring.
It can, definitely.
How do we make sure human judgment isn't lost in the process?
That's such a good point. Technology can definitely help, make things faster and more efficient.
Right.
But it's still so important to have that human intuition, to be able to assess those soft skills and that cultural fit.
So it's not all about checking boxes on a resume?
Nope, not at all.
Yeah.
Companies want people who can think critically, solve problems, and adapt to new situations.
Right.
It's hard to measure those things with just an algorithm.
Okay, so let's say you get through the screening process.
Great.
What happens next?
Ideally, you get that offer letter, the one that outlines all the terms, salary, benefits, start date.
Yes.
Hold on. Before the celebration starts, there's one more thing.
Yeah.
The background check.
Ah, yes, the background check. I remember one of our sources talked about an offer being pulled back because of something that popped up in a background check.
Oh, wow.
It seems like that could be a real problem for some people.
It can be. That's why being upfront and honest during the whole application process is so important.
From both sides.
Yes. Candidates need to be honest about anything that might be a red flag.
Right.
And companies need to be clear about what their background check policies are.
So it's a two-way street, built on trust and communication.
Exactly. Both sides have to be open and honest to make sure things work out.
All right, so let's say we've gone through the whole hiring process.
You got your dream team.
We got the team. Now what?
Now it's all about employee management.
Yeah.
That's where terms like performance review, workforce engagement, and professional development come in.
Performance reviews. Everyone's got a story about those, right?
For sure.
I noticed that some of our sources mentioned that those reviews are changing.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just a once-a-year thing anymore.
It's not. A lot of companies are doing more frequent, informal check-ins now.
Interesting. Why is that?
Well, that traditional yearly review can be a pretty big deal. Makes people nervous.
Yeah, I can see that.
And it's hard to cover a whole year's worth of work in one conversation.
Right. It makes more sense to talk about things regularly, right? Instead of waiting for that one big, stressful review.
It gives you a chance to give feedback, course correct, and talk about goals more often.
It's like getting feedback on a rough draft instead of waiting for the final grade.
That's a great way to put it.
And doesn't this tie into the idea of professional development?
Absolutely.
If you're getting feedback regularly, you can figure out what areas you need to work on.
Right, and then get the training you need. And companies who really care about their employees growing will make sure they have those opportunities.
Not just sending someone to a random conference and calling it a day.
No. Effective professional development is about meeting individual needs, aligning with the employee's goals and the company's goals.
Okay, so we've covered performance reviews and professional development. But what about those trickier parts of managing employees, like conflicts?
Well, that's where having good employee relations practices is so important. Things like an open door policy, exit interviews, and diversity and inclusion are key.
I'm curious about those open door policies. They sound great in theory, but do they really work? Do people actually feel comfortable going to their manager with a problem?
It really depends on the company culture. An open door policy is more than just having a door that's open.
Right.
You need a culture built on trust and open communication. Employees need to feel safe speaking up without worrying about getting in trouble.
So it's more about creating an environment where people feel heard.
Yes, exactly. And that's where leaders have to set the tone, showing they're open to hearing from their employees.
What about exit interviews? Are those just a formality, or can companies actually learn something from them?
Exit interviews can be really useful, but only if they're done right. It's not about checking a box.
Right.
It's about giving someone who's leaving a chance to give honest feedback about what it was like to work there.
Sort of like a hotel getting an honest review after someone stays there.
Yeah, exactly.
You find out what you're doing well and what you could do better.
Right. And just like a hotel wants good reviews, companies should want good feedback in exit interviews.
Makes sense. Okay, so we talked about open communication and learning from people who are leaving. What about making the workplace welcoming for everyone who's there now?
That's where diversity and inclusion comes in. And it's not just a trendy phrase. It's about making a workplace where everyone feels valued and respected.
So it's more than just hiring people from different backgrounds.
Yeah, for sure. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels like they belong.
Okay, I think this is a good place to take a break. We've covered a lot, from attracting talent to managing performance and making a workplace inclusive.
It's just the tip of the iceberg, though. There's so much more to talk about.
That's lucky because we have 2 more parts to this deep dive. We'll be back soon to keep going.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Before the break, we were breaking down all these common HR phrases.
We were, yeah.
I think we're ready to, go a little deeper now.
Yes. We've talked about what the terms mean, but I'm curious to see how they reflect those bigger trends and changes happening in the workplace.
Oh, for sure. Like, remember, talent acquisition.
Right.
The term itself suggests that power dynamic is shifting. It's not just companies choosing employees anymore.
Right.
It's about attracting and keeping really talented people in a job market that's so competitive.
It makes sense. Companies have to work harder to stand out and appeal to the best candidates these days.
Exactly. They're starting to see that investing in employer branding and showing off their company culture is as important as talking about salary and benefits.
So it's like marketing, but for people instead of products?
Precisely. And just like a good marketing campaign, talent acquisition needs a strategy.
Yeah.
You got to target the right people with the right message.
And speaking of targeting, we talked about candidate screening earlier. I'm wondering how companies make sure they're not missing out on great candidates who maybe don't fit a certain mold.
That's a really important point, and it's a challenge for a lot of companies.
Yeah, I bet.
They want to be efficient, of course.
Right.
But they also need to stay open-minded and make sure they're not being biased, which can lead to overlooking diverse talent.
So it's about finding that balance between using those data-driven tools and keeping that human judgment involved in the process.
Absolutely. Technology's great. It can help sort through all those applications and find potential matches.
Sure.
But it shouldn't completely replace human interaction and that ability to assess things like cultural fit, critical thinking, and emotional intelligence.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit and talk about performance reviews.
Okay.
We all know they can be kind of anxiety-inducing for a lot of people.
That's true. But one of the things we read suggested that the way companies are doing performance reviews is changing.
It is.
They're moving away from those traditional once-a-year evaluations and doing more regular informal check-ins.
That's interesting. What's behind that shift?
I think part of it is that the annual review can be so stressful. It makes everyone nervous.
Yeah, totally.
And it's hard to capture a whole year of someone's work in one conversation.
Right. Makes more sense to just talk about things more often, right?
Exactly. It allows for more feedback, more chances to adjust course, and more opportunities to talk about goals.
It's like getting feedback on a rough draft instead of waiting for the final grade.
Perfect analogy.
And wouldn't that tie into the idea of professional development too?
It definitely does.
If employees are getting regular feedback, they can figure out which areas they want to improve in.
Exactly. And then they can look for the training they need to do that. And if a company really cares about its employees growing, they'll make sure those opportunities are available.
So it's not just about sending employees to some random conference and calling it a day.
Nope. Effective professional development should be tailored to each person's needs.
Right.
It should match up with the employee's goals and the company's objectives.
Okay, we've talked about performance reviews and professional development. Now, what about when things aren't going so well? Like when there's a conflict between employees?
Ah, yes. Those tricky situations. That's where strong employee relations practices come in.
Right.
That's when terms like open door policy, exit interviews,
Yeah.
and diversity and inclusion become so important.
We talked about open door policies earlier,
Right.
but one of our sources questioned how effective they really are.
It's a fair question.
Do employees actually feel comfortable speaking up, even if there is a policy?
It all comes down to the company's culture.
I imagine so.
You can have an open door policy, but it's not enough. You have to create a culture where people feel safe to speak their minds without being afraid of what will happen.
So it's about making sure open communication is encouraged and respected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And leaders need to set a good example, showing they're actually open to hearing from their employees.
Now, what about those exit interviews?
Yeah.
Are they actually useful or are they just a formality?
They can be really valuable,
They can.
but only if they're done right. It shouldn't be just about checking a box.
Right.
It should be about giving the employee who's leaving a chance to honestly share their experience.
So it's like getting honest feedback after someone stays at a hotel.
Exactly.
They can tell you what you're doing well and what could be improved.
And just like a hotel wants good reviews, companies should want good feedback in exit interviews.
It shows they care.
Yes, even if the person is leaving.
Okay, so we've talked about open communication and learning from people who leave. But what about making the workplace welcoming and inclusive for everyone who's there?
Right, that's where diversity and inclusion comes in. And that's more than just a buzzword. It's about making sure everyone feels valued and respected.
So it goes beyond just hiring people from different backgrounds.
It does. It's about creating a culture where everyone feels like they belong and has the same opportunities to grow and advance.
Okay, so we've talked about attracting talent, managing performance, employee relations, diversity, and inclusion.
Sounds like we've covered a lot.
What about the thing everyone loves to talk about, compensation and benefits?
Ah, yes. The money part.
One of our sources pointed out this growing trend of salary transparency.
Yeah, I've noticed that too.
It seems like more companies are being open about salary ranges for different positions. Why is that?
Well, I think it's about creating a more level playing field for job seekers and promoting fairness in how people are paid.
Makes sense.
It also takes away some of the guesswork when it comes to salary negotiations,
It does.
Candidates can see if the company's compensation philosophy matches their own values.
So it seems like it's good for both the employee and the employer.
It does, yeah.
Employees feel more confident knowing they're being paid fairly,
Yes,
and employers can attract better talent by being upfront about how they pay.
exactly. And beyond just salary, benefits are becoming more and more important these days, especially for younger generations.
Oh, for sure.
People who really value work-life balance and their overall well-being.
So it's not just about health insurance and a retirement plan anymore?
Not at all. We're seeing companies offer things like help with paying off student loans, generous parental leave, resources for mental health, pet insurance, even unlimited vacation time.
Wow. It's definitely not your typical benefits package.
I think companies are realizing that to get and keep the best people, they need to offer more than just a good salary. They need to offer benefits that meet the needs of their employees.
So it's about recognizing that employees have lives outside of work and supporting their well-being actually benefits everyone.
Exactly. When employees feel valued and supported, they tend to be more engaged and productive, and they stay with the company longer.
Okay, I want to go back to those practical usage scenarios we talked about earlier.
Okay.
We've discussed the general ideas, but how do these HR phrases actually play out in real life?
I like that. Let's take a closer look at how even simple phrases can mean different things depending on the situation.
For example, imagine a job candidate gets an email that says, "Please submit your updated resume and references." Seems pretty straightforward, right?
It does.
Mhm.
But it's a reminder that the hiring process goes both ways.
Oh, so.
The company's checking out the candidate, but the candidate is also checking out the company.
Ah, I see.
That request for a resume and references means the company's serious about the candidate and moving forward.
And for the candidate, it's their chance to show what they've got and make a good impression.
Exactly.
Right.
Putting your best foot forward.
Now, let's say someone gets the job and it's their first day.
Okay.
Someone says, "Welcome to the team."
Nice.
Could that simple phrase be interpreted in different ways?
Definitely. On the surface, it's welcoming and friendly, but it could mean different things. It might be genuine excitement, or it might just be a formality.
It depends on the company culture and how they say it, I guess.
It does, yeah. A truly welcoming environment is more than just words.
Right.
It's about making people feel like they belong and giving them what they need to succeed.
Okay, let's jump ahead a few months. It's time for that performance review. Whether the manager says, "Let's review your performance for this quarter," or "Your work has been amazing," those phrases can bring up different emotions for people.
No doubt. Performance reviews can be nerve-wracking, but they can also be a chance to grow and be recognized.
For sure.
The way the conversation is set up and how the manager talks can really affect how the employee takes the feedback.
It's about making it a safe and supportive environment, right?
Yes.
Where feedback is seen as a way to improve, not as a punishment.
Exactly.
Mm.
And when performance reviews are done well, it can actually strengthen the relationship between the manager and the employee.
Now, what about those times when things go wrong and there's a conflict between employees?
Oh, yeah.
Hearing, "Let's resolve this matter professionally," can sound either reassuring or kind of scary, depending on the situation.
It's a reminder that workplace conflicts should be handled calmly, respectfully, and with a focus on finding solutions.
Right.
But it can also feel like a warning to be careful and not make things worse.
So it's about finding that balance, addressing the issue directly, but also staying professional and respectful.
Exactly. And that's where good conflict resolution skills come in. It's about listening to each other, understanding where everyone's coming from, and finding a solution that works for everyone.
And lastly, let's think about that phrase, "We're sorry to see you leave," often said during an exit interview. Is that always sincere, or is it sometimes just something people say?
I think it depends on the company and why the person is leaving.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a genuine expression of regret and acknowledging what that employee contributed.
Right.
But sometimes it might just be a routine thing they say
Yeah.
as part of the process.
So you have to kind of read between the lines and consider the whole situation.
Exactly. An exit interview, when done with sincerity, can be a good opportunity for everyone to get closure, share feedback, and learn from what happened.
Wow, we covered a lot in this part of our deep dive.
You did?
We've explored how these HR phrases connect to bigger workplace trends, looked at how they're used in real life, and talked about the subtle ways they can be interpreted.
We really dug into those power dynamics, the importance of communication, and the need for empathy in these sometimes difficult conversations.
But there's one more crucial thing we need to talk about before we wrap up:
What's that?
the human element. Welcome back to the deep dive. We've spent this whole episode trying to decode the language of HR, from talent acquisition all the way to exit interviews.
This whole world unto itself.
It is. But as we wrap things up, I keep thinking about something we talked about earlier, that human element.
Oh yeah, that's so important.
It's easy to get lost in all the jargon and processes, but we have to remember that HR is really about people.
Absolutely.
It's about creating workplaces where everyone feels valued and supported, where they can do their best.
Couldn't agree more.
So how do we bring more of that human touch into these conversations, especially when we're dealing with tricky stuff like performance reviews or conflict resolution?
I think empathy is a huge part of it.
Empathy.
Yeah, like really trying to see things from the other person's perspective.
Putting yourself in their shoes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Trying to understand their point of view, what motivates them, what challenges they're facing.
It's about remembering that behind every job title, every HR interaction, there's a whole person.
Right, with a life outside of work, with dreams and worries and everything else.
And that goes both ways, right?
It does.
For the employee and the HR person or manager.
Yeah.
So when you're giving feedback during a performance review, it's not just about listing what needs to improve.
No, it's not.
It's about understanding the context, seeing the person's strengths and focusing on how they can grow.
You want to make it a conversation, a collaboration to help that person succeed.
Not a judgment.
Right.
What about when there's a conflict between employees? How do you handle that with that human touch?
That's when really listening and trying to understand the root of the problem is so important.
So not just jumping in to fix it.
No, it's more about creating that space for people to talk openly and work towards a solution that feels fair to everyone involved.
It's about mediating, not dictating.
Exactly. And even during an exit interview, when someone's leaving the company,
Right.
There's a chance to show genuine appreciation for what they've done.
To acknowledge their reasons for moving on, wish them well.
Yes. And maybe even leave things open for connecting again in the future.
You know, it strikes me that it's not just about what you say in these situations, but how you say it.
Oh, absolutely.
The tone of your voice, your body language, showing that you care about the other person.
Those things matter so much.
They do.
It's about being aware of that power dynamic and using it in a way that's responsible and ethical.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the language of HR, I think the biggest lesson here is that it's not just about the words, but about how we use them.
It's true.
It's about remembering that behind every HR phrase, every process, there's a human story.
Beautifully put.
Thanks for joining us on this journey, everyone.
We hope you enjoyed it.
We hope this deep dive gave you a fresh perspective on HR and maybe even inspired you to bring a little more humanity into your own workplace.
All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into HR phrases.
Oh, sounds interesting.
We've got 2 guides packed with examples,
Oh,
and we're going to decode them.
awesome.
Not just their meanings, but like the strategy behind them.
I like it.
It's like your secret decoder ring for the workplace.
Yeah.
From job hunting to performance reviews and everything in between.
That's a lot of ground to cover.
It is, but it's going to be fun.
Okay, I'm ready.
So let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
Recruitment. We've all seen those job postings.
Yeah.
You know the ones we are looking for a qualified candidate for the position of.
Ugh, so boring.
I know, right? It's like a robot wrote it.
Exactly.
So in today's world, don't you think companies need to stand out a bit more?
Definitely, they need to grab your attention,
Exactly.
make you actually want to apply.
So how can they use language to make a job posting more captivating?
Well, instead of just stating the obvious,
Mm-hmm.
they need to paint a picture.
Ooh, I like that.
You know, highlight the challenges, the opportunities, the impact the person will make.
That makes sense.
It's about sparking that feeling,
What feeling?
that I want to be part of that feeling.
Ooh, I get it, like a sense of purpose.
Exactly.
Okay, now what about that other classic?
Which one?
The ideal candidate should possess.
Oh, yeah, that one.
It seems like every job description has it.
Pretty much.
But I've noticed some are just laundry lists of requirements,
Yeah.
while others are more strategic.
Interesting.
What's the difference?
Well, instead of focusing solely on qualifications,
Okay.
companies should focus on the desired outcomes.
Like what?
What will this person achieve?
Mm-hmm.
What problems will they solve?
Interesting.
By framing it that way, they attract candidates who are excited about the impact they can make.
It's like they're not just filling a role, they're joining a mission.
Exactly.
I like that. Aligning expectations from the start.
Absolutely.
And then, of course, there's the deadline.
Yeah.
Applications will be accepted until...
Can't forget that.
But is there more to it than just a date?
More than you might think.
Really?
It's about subtly communicating expectations.
Like what?
Well, respecting deadlines shows you're organized.
Makes sense.
On the flip side, a company that's vague about deadlines might signal a lack of organization.
Ooh, that's a good point. It's like a red flag.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's say you've applied
No.
and you get that email.
Oh, yeah.
We would like to invite you for an interview.
The moment you've been waiting for.
It is, but even this phrase can be approached strategically.
How so?
What can companies do to make it stand out?
Instead of a generic invitation,
Okay,
why not add a personal touch?
like what?
Mention something specific
Oh,
about
developed it.
the candidate's application, their background.
I see.
It shows they've actually read it.
Yeah, that would make me feel valued.
Exactly.
Okay, then comes the scheduling back and forth.
Oh, yeah, the dreaded scheduling dance.
Please confirm your availability.
So many emails.
Any hidden insights here?
Think of it as a test.
Of what?
Your communication skills.
Interesting.
Being prompt and professional shows respect for everyone's time.
Right, it's like the first impression.
Exactly.
Okay, and then the big moment, the interview.
Here we go.
You're likely to hear, could you elaborate on your experience with?
That's a classic.
Any advice for how to handle it?
Be prepared
For what?
to share specific examples
Ah.
of how you've used your skills to achieve results.
So it's not just about listing skills.
No, it's about telling a story.
I like
A
that.
story that showcases your abilities.
And makes you memorable.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's fast forward.
Two.
You land the job
Woohoo!
and you hear, welcome aboard.
Feels good.
But is this just a formality or is there more to it?
It's the gateway.
To what?
A successful onboarding experience.
Ah, I see.
It's about making the new employee feel valued.
Part of the team.
Exactly.
So what comes after welcome aboard?
Well, things like, let's go over your onboarding schedule, or please review the employee handbook.
Yeah, those are important.
Their opportunities.
To do what?
Set clear expectations, answer questions, make the transition smooth.
So it's about structure and support right from the start.
Absolutely.
But how can companies go beyond the standard handbook?
You mean make it more engaging?
Yeah, more impactful.
Well, instead of a dense document,
Mm-hmm.
imagine an interactive online handbook.
Ooh, with what?
Videos, quizzes, maybe even a forum for new hires to connect.
I love that. Turning something boring into something fun.
It's about welcoming them into the culture.
That's a great point.
It's not just about compliance, it's about belonging.
Okay, so onboarding is crucial,
Definitely.
but it's also about setting employees up for success.
Yes.
Which brings us to performance management.
Right?
What's the strategy behind? Let's discuss your performance goals for this quarter.
It signals a shift,
From what?
a top-down approach to a collaborative one.
Interesting.
It's about aligning expectations and making sure the employee understands how their work contributes to the bigger picture.
So it's a two-way conversation,
Exactly.
not a dictate.
Right.
Everyone loves recognition.
Of
Right.
course.
But hearing your contributions have been highly valued can sometimes feel generic.
yeah, it needs to be more specific.
How can companies make it more meaningful?
Highlight a specific action or achievement.
Like what?
Maybe the way you handled that client issue was exceptional and it really saved the day.
Oh, wow. That's much better.
It's more impactful and memorable.
Okay, so now for the elephant in the room.
Oh, boy.
There's room for improvement in.
Nobody likes hearing that,
It's true, but it's a reality of work life.
unfortunately.
So how can managers deliver this feedback constructively?
Frame it as an opportunity for growth.
Okay, I like that.
Instead of focusing on what went wrong,
Mm-hmm.
focus on how to improve.
Do you give me an example?
Sure, like I've noticed that your presentations sometimes lose focus. Let's work together to develop some techniques to keep your audience engaged.
That's much better. It's about offering support.
Exactly.
All right, now let's dive into employee relations.
Okay.
What's the message behind we encourage open communication?
It's a statement of values.
Meaning,
The company values feedback and welcomes ideas.
but it's not enough to just say it, right?
No, they have to show it.
How-
By actively listening, responding to feedback, creating safe spaces for dialogue.
So walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Exactly.
Conflicts are bound to happen.
In any workplace, yes.
What's the significance of, let's address this matter professionally?
It sets the tone.
For what?
A respectful and solution-oriented approach.
I see.
It's about acknowledging the issue and encouraging dialogue.
While staying professional.
Of course.
What about, this is a safe space to discuss your concerns?
It's about creating a culture of trust.
So employees feel safe to speak up
Exactly.
without fear of repercussions.
Right.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground.
We have.
From recruitment to employee relations.
And everything in between.
It's fascinating how much strategy and nuance is packed into these phrases.
It really is.
Ready to keep exploring.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's go behind the scenes a bit.
Okay, what do you have in mind?
Phrases you might not hear every day, but are still super important.
Got it.
Like, have you ever heard of an ATS?
Maybe.
Vaguely.
Applicant tracking system.
Oh, right. But what is it exactly?
Think of it like a digital gatekeeper for resumes.
Is that all?
It uses algorithms
Do you see?
to scan through tons of applications, hundreds, even thousands sometimes.
Wow. So it's not just about having a good resume.
It's about having a resume the ATS understands.
So how do you do that?
Pay close attention to the keywords in the job description.
Yeah.
Make sure those are in your resume.
Okay.
Use clear language.
Yeah.
Avoid jargon or weird formatting.
So basically make it easy for the ATS to find your skills.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about onboarding.
Okay.
We talked about the basics.
Welcome aboard, the handbook.
Right.
But there's more to it than that, right?
Onboarding is a process.
Not just an event.
Exactly. It's an ongoing journey.
Of what?
Integrating new hires into the company.
The culture, the work, everything.
Yep, setting them up for success.
I see. But sometimes companies just focus on the logistics.
Paperwork, forms, all that.
Yeah. How can they make it more engaging?
Get creative.
Oh.
Use gamification challenges.
Hmm.
Maybe new hires earn points for completing modules.
Okay.
Or do a scavenger hunt to learn about different departments.
Well, that's fun.
It makes it more interactive and memorable.
I like it.
All right, let's talk about keeping employees engaged.
Retention. Right.
Exactly.
What's the key phrase here?
Employee value proposition.
EVP.
That's it.
But what does it mean?
It's why someone would want to work at your company.
Beyond just the salary.
Right. The culture, the growth opportunities, the meaningful work.
So it's the whole package.
It's what attracts and keeps good people.
A lot of companies struggle with this, don't they?
Defining their EVP.
Yeah.
They do.
What's the best way to do it?
Listen to your employees.
Okay.
What do they value?
Makes sense.
Use that to create an EVP that resonates.
Authentic and aligned.
Exactly.
Okay, how about this stay interview?
Interesting one.
Seems counterintuitive.
It is a bit.
Why do them?
Instead of waiting for someone to quit,
Right.
you talk to them about what's working, what's not.
Before they even think about leaving.
Exactly. It's proactive.
But would people be honest?
That's where trust comes in.
A safe space to talk.
Right. It's a conversation, not an interrogation.
Okay, let's talk about growth and development.
Career pathing is a big one.
It is, but what does it actually mean?
Empowering employees to own their careers.
Okay.
Help them figure out their goals.
Provide guidance, resources.
Exactly, and create opportunities for them to grow.
So it's more than just an annual review.
Much more.
How can companies make it ongoing?
Mentorship programs, skill assessments, job shadowing,
I see.
even internal talent marketplaces,
What's that?
where employees can express interest in different projects or roles.
Oh, I like that.
It's about continuous learning.
Essential in today's world.
Absolutely.
We can't forget about recognition.
Important one.
Recognition program. But how do you make it meaningful?
Make it personal.
Ah,
Peer-to-peer recognition.
okay.
Spot bonuses, timely rewards.
So not just a generic employee of the month.
No, it needs to be specific and genuine.
All right, let's talk about the other side of retention.
The flip side.
Employee turnover.
Yeah.
What's the significance of this phrase?
It tells you how healthy your organization is.
Really?
High turnover means something's wrong.
Like what?
Low morale, no growth opportunities, bad management.
So it's a warning sign.
It is. You need to figure out why people are leaving.
And fix it?
Exactly. Create a
Yeah.
place where people want to stay.
Okay, all of this happens within the context of
Of what?
organizational culture.
The big one.
It's a buzzword, but what does it really mean?
It's the invisible force that shapes everything.
Everything.
How decisions are made.
Okay.
How people interact.
It's the personality of the company.
You got it.
So how do you create a positive culture?
It starts with leadership.
Oh,
Leaders who live the values, communicate clearly,
Okay.
create a sense of purpose.
It's not just about perks and fun stuff.
No, it's much deeper than that.
All right, let's move on to performance evaluations.
Okay.
Key performance indicators.
KPIs.
What's the strategy with those?
KPIs are a way to track progress.
Towards goals.
Right, but they need to be the right KPIs,
Meaning?
aligned with individual role and business objectives.
So not just random metrics.
No, they should
Yeah.
be meaningful and drive performance.
What about 360-degree feedback?
That's a good one.
Seems more holistic.
It is. You get feedback from everyone,
Your boss, your peers.
even your subordinates.
Wow, that's a lot of feedback.
It gives you a well-rounded view.
But could it get messy?
It can if it's not done right.
So how do you do it right?
Clear guidelines, constructive criticism.
Focus on development, not judgment.
Exactly.
For new hires, there's often a probation period.
Yeah, that's standard.
What's the purpose?
It's a trial period.
For both sides.
Right. The employee and the employer.
So they can see if it's a good fit.
Exactly.
But wouldn't that make new hires anxious?
It could, but clear communication is key.
So they know what's expected.
Regular check-ins are important too.
Make it a collaborative experience.
Exactly.
Okay, what happens when performance isn't good?
Then you might have a PIP.
Performance improvement plan.
Yep. But it shouldn't be scary.
How so?
It's an opportunity to get back on track.
With support and clear goals.
Right. It's about improvement, not punishment.
I like that. Now, what about when someone's doing great?
Time for a reward.
Like merit-based pay.
That's one way.
But it can be controversial.
It can. It needs to be fair.
Meaning?
Based on clear criteria, transparently communicated.
So everyone knows how it works.
Exactly.
All right, let's talk about compliance and policy.
Okay.
Starting with EEO.
Equal employment opportunity.
What does that actually mean in practice?
It means everyone has a fair chance.
Regardless of their background.
Right. No discrimination.
So how do you create a culture of EEO?
Leadership commitment,
Okay.
diversity training, open dialogue, accountability.
It's about creating a truly inclusive workplace.
That's the goal.
Speaking of inclusivity,
Mhm.
workplace harassment policy.
Can't forget that one.
But just having a policy isn't enough.
No, you need to enforce it.
And create a culture of respect
Exactly. Provide training, clear reporting mechanisms.
so people feel safe to speak up.
Absolutely.
Code of conduct is another important one.
So that's the ethical standards.
But how do you make it more than just words on paper?
Live it every day.
Meanwhile,
Review it regularly. Provide training.
hold people accountable.
Make ethics part of your DNA.
What about the grievance procedure?
Important for resolving issues fairly
So employees have a way to voice concerns.
without fear of retaliation.
And finally, compliance training.
Everyone's favorite.
I know, but it's necessary.
It is, but how do you make it less boring?
That's the challenge.
Get creative.
Again.
Always. Use scenarios, games, make it relevant.
So people actually learn something.
Exactly. Turn it into a positive experience.
Wow, we've covered so much.
We have, from A to Z of HR.
It's amazing how much these phrases matter.
They really do. They shape the whole employee experience.
I used to think they were just about being formal,
This procedure,
Yeah, but now I see them differently.
how so?
They're tools for creating a good workplace.
A positive and productive environment.
Exactly.
And anyone can benefit from understanding them.
That's true. No matter your role.
It's about communication and understanding the dynamics.
I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
We have. There's always more to explore.
This has been a great deep dive, though.
I agree. It's been fun.
So as we wrap up, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just pay attention to the language around you.
At work,
Everywhere, really, but especially at work.
what should we be listening for?
Not just the words themselves.
But the meaning behind them.
Exactly. The intentions, the impact.
It's like being a language detective.
Kind of. Being mindful of the power of words
I like that. Using language to make work better.
for everyone.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone.
It's been a pleasure.
Remember, clear communication is key to a thriving workplace. Until next time.